So I can't be the only one with a ton of fabric left over from mask making. Even though I'm still making a few, I have slowed down quite a bit, and of course people can buy them everywhere. So I decided to shift to eye mask or sleep mask making, so I can use some of the same materials that I used for the face mask and some of those scraps that I had left over, and I can make this really adorable sleep mask too. But before we get started on the tutorial, my name is Chris O'Neill from Sew the Distance. Thank you for joining me today. So this adorable face mask is super easy, it's beginner friendly, and of course it uses up those scraps. It would be perfect as a gift or for yourself. So let's first talk about the supplies that you will need. So here are the supplies that you will need. You'll need a template, and I show you at the beginning how to make your own template, but you can also get it from my blog. You'll need some sort of writing instrument like a pen or a pencil. These won't show, so you don't have to worry about them being water soluble or anything like that. Fabric scissors, paper scissors, a ruler, clips, pins, an iron, and an ironing board or an ironing surface, your sewing machine, thread, a turning tool, and optional pinking shears, and glue, Elmer's glue if you want to use it. The fabric requirements for the sleep mask are as follows. The front fabric, you'll need a 5" by 8.5" piece of fabric. The back is the same size, 5" by 8.5", and a batting scrap is also the same size, 5" by 8.5". Now I was a little generous with these sizes. You could go a little bit smaller, but see how you make out with these sizes. You might have some extra. You'll also need some elastic. I used an 11" length, and that seemed to fit most people, but the length will vary, of course, because everybody's heads are different sizes. I first want to just briefly talk to you about how I made my pattern, because if you want to replicate it or maybe make it smaller or bigger depending on the size of someone's face, this would be how you did it. So I just took a pair of my sunglasses and I laid them down, and I just traced with a very generous seam allowance around them. Now my first couple weren't quite this big, and you can see I always make some prototypes before I do a video. You can see I started with this, and then actually I started with this one, which was way too small, and then this one had too big of a peak. Same thing with this one, and then finally landed on these. So it is a process, but it is worth playing with because, you know, everybody's face is different. The next thing I want to talk to you about is the fabric choice. So a dark fabric, of course, is going to block out more of the light. If you're relatively new to sewing, you maybe want to match those fabrics, at least in color, so it's not so noticeable if you have some mistakes. It also helps you with picking a thread color for your top stitching. So I just wanted to mention that for this eye mask. So this is the one I landed on, and I am going to use contrasting fabrics for this, mostly so you can see the differences, and because I think it looks really, really cute. I'll put the fabric line up on the screen. This was a really fun, pretty print that I absolutely fell in love with. So let's talk about materials. So you have your elastic, and just so you know, this is 11 inches, and the way I came up with that number is it is half of the size of my head. So I took a tape measure, measured my head, and cut it in half, and my head is 22 inches, which I think is quite large, but who knows. Anyway, that's how I came up with this size. This, of course, is adjustable too if you know you have a smaller head, or if it's for a teenager, or even for a man, you want to adjust it accordingly, either make it smaller or bigger. And then you have your batting, and I just use a lightweight batting because, who wants a real heavy batting on their face? You don't want it to be too hot, and it does make it a little bit easier when you're finishing and turning it. So I'm going to set these two pieces aside, and we're going to just focus on these fabrics, okay? So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to layer the front and the back, just like that, and you're going to fold it in half. Okay, and I just finger press that crease. Okay, next you're going to take the template, and you're going to lay it right on the crease of that fabric, okay? And you can see there's some excess, so if you don't have your fabrics lined up exactly, it's no big deal. You'll be able to scooch it over a little bit. Next, you're going to just draw around the template. Just like that. You're not going to see this mark. It's going to be in the seam allowance, and actually might even be trimmed off. So don't worry about what kind of pen you use. Nobody is ever going to see it. Next, you're going to take some fabric scissors and cut all the way around on that line, keeping your pieces folded. This is a symmetrical pattern, so it's not going to matter if the fabrics are right sides together or wrong sides together or whatever. Also, I suggest cutting both the fabrics at the same time. That way, if you're off a little bit, they're going to line up. Okay, so now you have your pieces cut out and we're ready to assemble for sewing. So the first thing you're going to do is take this front piece and you're going to measure 1.5 inches down, and you're going to just put a small mark on the edges. And that's going to be your elastic placement. So that'll make sense in a moment. That's not showing up real well. I'm going to actually use my pen because you're not going to see it. Okay, so then you're going to take your batting piece, and I just use a scrap of batting, and I'm going to place the front side onto this piece of batting, right? Okay, so it's the front side. I did not cut the batting out. That's important. I did not cut the batting out. It's going to make your life easier if we cut that out at the end. Next, I'm going to take my elastic. If I can see my marks. Right there. Right. Actually, it's right there. Make sure you can see your marks. And I'm going to place one piece of my elastic on one side and clip it. Okay, and this one, I'm going to make sure it's straight and not twisted. And I'm going to place it on this side and clip it. Okay, so I'm going to kind of bundle that up in the middle. So I'm also going to double check that it's straight, which it is not. See, that happens. Let's do that again. Now you can adjust the placement of the elastic for your own taste and what you like. Okay, that is straight. Okay, so I'm going to bundle that in the middle like this. And then I'm going to take my backing fabric and place it right on top, right sides together. Okay. Now we cut these at the same time, so they should be about the same size. And then I'm going to take that clip and clip it over that backing, making sure that my elastic is still in there. The next thing I like to do, and I did this when I was making face masks, is I would put a pin encompassing that elastic. That ensures that I do not sew over it. The next thing I'm going to do is mark my opening. So it's a good idea to mark it. Just sometimes you get in the zone and you're sewing and you don't remember that you're supposed to do this. So I want my opening to be up here on the top because this is all curved and it's going to be a lot harder to tuck those edges in. So I'm going to just mark my opening, and there's not a lot of bulk, but there is some. So I'm just going to mark, what is that? About 2 inches of an opening. Okay. So next we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to sew 1/4 inch all the way around. I'm also going to throw a few more pins in just to secure it and make sure it doesn't shift. All right, so to sew around this, we're going to start at our first mark and we're going to back stitch and then keep going all the way around and using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. When we get to the sides where the elastic is, we're going to back stitch over them to secure them into place. So let me show you how I'm doing it. Oh, and I'm using a 2.4 stitch length, which is just your standard stitch length. At least I think it is. I don't know. That's the one that comes up as a default on my machine. So I'm just going to take a few stitches, back stitch, and keep going all the way around. And again, when I get to those elastics, I'm just going to back stitch over them just to secure them a little bit more. And we're going to keep going. And we're going to end right at that mark on the other side. And again, back stitch. Okay. Now we're going to press this and we are going to trim it and turn it. Okay, so now that I've sewn all the way around and I used a 1/4 inch seam allowance, I'm going to trim around this And I can use regular scissors and do little clips in, or I can use pinking shears. I'll show you half with pinking shears and half with the clips. So I'm just gonna go in and get kind of close to that seam and cut these. And I hate pinking shears, so this is a struggle for me. I think they're crazy hard to use, to be honest with you. So I'm just gonna cut that off. All right, so you can see they're just raggedy. And then I'm gonna do the rest just by trimming. And I'm trimming all 3 pieces. So I'm trimming the backing, the front, and the batting of the eye mask. And I'm gonna trim this like this, and I'll show you how I clip in. Trim all the way around. If you catch some of that seam allowance, it's okay. I can even see I was a little generous in a few places. So then to get these curves right, you're just gonna clip little tiny clips to make sure that the curves can ease in. Just like that. Just maybe, I don't know, 1/4 inch apart. This is a very forgiving project, so if your 1/4 inch seam isn't quite right, or if you want to even use a bigger seam, you can. It's not going to matter. You just want to kind of keep it symmetrical as best as you can. Okay, so now we're going to reach into this opening, and we want to make sure that we pull this through between the front and the backing fabrics. You don't want to go in here with the batting, okay? So it's between the front and the back, and we're just going to turn it. Take your time with this so you don't pull out any stitches, and you just work it through. I'll fast forward this part. Okay, so that's pulled through, and I'm going to take a chopstick or some sort of a tool with a blunt edge and get those edges nice and crisp. So you're just going to reach in there and just, I'm using a chopstick, but anything with a blunt edge will do. And I'm just going to push them out. Like that. So they're nice and crisp. And then I'm going to take it to the iron and just make sure that it's even more crisp. Okay, so now that you have it turned, you are going to press it really, really well. So a couple things you want to be aware of. First of all, the elastic can melt. So this is a really soft elastic and can easily melt. So just be aware of that. Some are more durable than others. Just be aware that it could melt because it has polyester in it. The other thing you want to make sure is that this is tucked under. This is your turning spot. Now you can use glue, and you just use Elmer's school glue and put a few drops on there to close it. I show that in the coaster video, but you don't have to. And for this video, I'm going to show how to finish it without using the glue. But you know, it's water soluble. Do not worry about using a little bit of glue. It sometimes can really help. So we're just going to go around the edges and press it really well and get it ready for top stitching. And that edge is pressed well too, turned under. And what I'm going to do is just put a clip on that to remind me that it's right there when I'm top stitching, and that I need to give that some extra attention. Actually, we're going to turn that around. There we go. And I'm going to put 2 clips in just to be safe. Okay, so we're just going to top stitch around this edge, and I'll show you how I do that. All right, so to top stitch, I'm going to turn my stitch length down to a 1, okay? And I'm gonna start sewing right here. And that's because I don't want that where I start and stop to be too noticeable. So this will be a good spot for that. While you're sewing, you wanna make sure that you keep the elastic out of the way and you don't sew over it. luckily it's stretchy, so that helps. And you're also going to be really careful around those curves, going very slow as you sew around them. So we're just going to sew maybe 1/8 of an inch in from the edge. The important thing is to be consistent and hold that all down. And you also want to make sure that your depth of stitch, so if it's 1/8 of an inch, is far enough in that it catches that fold of where you turn. So I'm just going to take a few stitches at that 1.0, and then I'm going to turn it up to 3 for top stitching. There we go. As we come up to where we started, we're going to stitch until we're maybe 1/2 an inch away from it, turn our stitch length back down to 1, and that's going to secure those stitches nicely. And that's it. We're going to knot it. If you don't have the knot feature on your machine, don't worry about it. You won't need to. You could also back stitch if you want to. I have a puppy that's hitting the tripod, so please excuse the movement. And there you have it. It's all done. It's top stitched, and it is ready to wear or to gift or whatever you'd like to do with it. Thank you so much for watching. Sorry about the little mishap with the pup. She's been underfoot the whole day today, but we just love her to pieces. I hope you have a wonderful week. I hope you make some of these eye masks. And if you have any questions or anything, let me know. You can contact me through Facebook or Instagram or here on YouTube. You can leave a comment or even email me. I'll put my email up on the screen here. I hope you have a wonderful week and make sure you take some time to sew. I'll see you soon. Bye.